In this video, we'll talk about whether or not you should worry about fiber as part of a carnivore diet. Now, considering that meat doesn't have any fiber, a lot of people who are considering going on a carnivore diet to maybe fix their gut or skin issues or a metabolic condition wonder what they can do to get enough fiber into their diet. After all, a lot of people think that fiber is important to maintain optimal gut health, to have regular bowel movements, etc. Now in this video, I'll share with you everything you need to know about fiber and what role it plays or can play as part of a well-designed carnivore diet. And I will also share with you what carnivore compatible sources of fiber there are that you can potentially consider, and what our German Shepherd occasionally does to increase his fiber intake. Now, if you don't have time to watch the entire video, which I recommend until the end, here are a couple of key takeaways that I think are important to mention right away. One is humans don't need fiber for optimal gut health. It's a myth. There is nothing in fiber that we need to maintain a proper and healthy gut microbiome. Consuming fiber increases stool volume and slows down digestion. If you already have gut issues like irritable bowel syndrome, which I had for 3 decades of my life, slowing down digestion and making more stool is incredibly counterproductive. It's the opposite of what you want. One thing is true, that fiber can improve your body's blood sugar response. But if you're eating only meat, which doesn't have any carbohydrates, that's not really something you should worry about. One thing that is also true, fiber does not improve the bacterial composition of your gut, also known as alpha diversity. We'll talk about that in a bit. I also want to mention that early humans and our Paleolithic ancestors, including also modern hunter-gatherer tribes, don't consume meaningful amounts of fiber. They might chew on or might have chewed on fibrous plants like tubers, but then spit them out, maybe to extract some of the nutrients, some of the water-soluble nutrients, but they would not consume the fibrous material because it's indigestible, and we've seen it over and over again with the Hadza in Tanzania. They chew on, some of those fibrous tubers or, root vegetables and then just spit it out. Extract some nutrients, maybe for the taste, and spit it out. Consuming fiber does not improve heart health, reduce the risk of cancer, or support weight loss. And we have now several high-quality studies, including the Women's Health Initiative dietary modification trial, that clearly show that fiber doesn't do any of that. It's a myth. It's been around, unfortunately, for a long time, but it doesn't really work like that. Now, one thing that you might have noticed if you consume a fair amount of fiber, and that studies have also shown, that consuming fiber makes you fart more. Now, if you're a fan of increased anal gas evacuations, by all means, fiber is a great thing. For everyone else, me included, not so much. I rather don't fart or not as much, certainly not more. So with that out of the way, let's get into some of the key aspects that you should consider about fiber and in combination with a carnivore diet. Some of the myths maybe we want to bust so you can feel better just consuming your steak and not worrying about fiber so much. Number one is fiber is not important for a healthy gut. That's a misconception. Now there is some truth to that, and that is that consuming a high-fiber diet can lead to an increase in certain bacteria in your stool, or you can at least then find that bacteria in your stool, especially Bifidobacterium spp. But here is the kicker. Consuming fiber does not improve the diversity of microbial species within the gut microbiome, also known as alpha diversity. And that's really the key, because alpha diversity is a key indicator of gut health, and consuming fiber does not improve alpha diversity. Studies have shown it over and over again. And then I'll link some of that down below. I actually linked my blog post, which has links to all of the studies and more information on what I discuss here. So consuming fiber does not improve gut health. It makes you more bloated and fart more often. That's also something studies have shown, especially vegan men appear to be farting 7 times more than someone else who is not on a plant-based diet. That's not a good thing. I know there's this misconception that being bloated and looking like you're about to give birth and farting all the time is a sign of good gut health. It is not. It's just a sign of being incredibly uncomfortable all the time. Myth number 2 is fiber is necessary for regular bowel movements. Now, that's something I come across a lot, especially in the realm of people who want to heal their gut, maybe want to heal IBS and, switch to a purely meat-based diet. And then they notice, they get constipated, they have less frequent bowel movements, maybe instead of 3-4 times a day, only once a day, or maybe once every other day. And so the assumption is they need to increase or eat more fiber to keep everything going. But that's not true. You can have perfectly regular bowel movements by consuming only meat. I've experienced that firsthand. I mean, I'm now on an animal-based diet, so I do consume some plants, and some of which also contain fiber. But even on days where I don't do that, or during the time where I consumed only meat, I had regular bowel movements every single morning like clockwork. And there are a lot of people who have been on a pure carnivore diets, including medical professionals like Dr. Sean Baker or Dr. Anthony Chaffee, who have regular bowel movements, and they've not been eating anything but meat for several years, So it's not true. However, there are two things to consider, and it's important if you're in the process of switching over to a carnivore diet and you noticed changes in your bowel movements. And one is that any dietary change can temporarily change your bowel movements. It can cause constipation, diarrhea in some cases. What I recommend is, if you can afford it, just ease it in, cut out plants, over the course of a few days, allow your bowels to get used to the different, food that comes down the pike instead of going cold turkey, which is usually what I do. That's number one. Now, if you want to do it cold turkey and you experience, you feel like constipated, just increase your fluid intake, increase your sodium intake, increase your magnesium intake, maybe even supplement with creatine. Both magnesium and creatine in higher doses can lead to loose stools, which is, one of the negative side effects of those two supplements, but it can come in handy if you feel like, you're constipated and you need things to move again. The second, maybe more important aspect is that if you consume only meat, your body produces less waste, meaning your stool volume decreases because it doesn't have all the plant stuff that's indigestible that needs to get out, So by consuming only meat, your stool volume is likely less, and you might even poop less often. That doesn't mean you're constipated, it just means that you have less waste products, So that's a good thing generally. You can spend less time on the toilet, that's a good thing, more time for something else to be productive. But again, I can tell you from first-hand experience and from anyone I talk to who follows a carnivore diet that regular bowel movements are completely normal and doable, of course, on a meat-based, carnivore-based diet. Number 3, myth: fiber is critical to support cardiovascular health and for blood pressure control. There might be something to it if you follow a standard American diet. Maybe there are benefits if you eat a lot of junk and crap food, like on a standard American diet, that eating fiber might have a positive impact, might make things a little better. But that doesn't mean, the situation or your diet is good. There are plenty of studies, including the one I mentioned before, the Women's Health Initiative dietary modification trial, that have clearly shown that consuming fiber or increasing a fiber intake has no implication on any of those metrics. It doesn't make anything better, it doesn't make your heart healthier, it doesn't reduce blood pressure, none of that. The best thing you can do is, especially if you're already on a carnivore diet, you're basically on the best diet you can be. I mean, I'm not saying that you have to do a carnivore for the rest of your life, and there is no room for any plants. I'm on an animal-based diet. I consume certain plants and non-animal products. Even so, that's, if you do that, if you're on an animal-based diet, if you're on a carnivore diet, there is nothing you have to worry about or should have to worry about as far as heart health, cardiovascular health, or metabolic disease is concerned. You're already doing a lot to be on the right path, and fiber is not gonna improve any of that. The second or fourth myth that I've come across is that fiber can help with weight loss and treat obesity. Now, there are a lot of people who choose a carnivore diet specifically for those reasons, to lose weight. Maybe they're obese or overweight and want to lose fat in particular and body mass in general. Fiber is not going to help with that either. We've seen that over and over in studies that consuming fiber does not help with weight loss. Yes, it increases your stool volume, obviously. If you consume a lot of fibrous material, it might take up space, so you might eat less during a meal. But since you're not getting any nutrients or energy from that fiber, you're gonna eat again then in a little bit when you're hungry again. And so at the end of the day, you've not saved anything, you've not done anything to improve weight loss. Now, if you're on a carnivore diet in particular, that's by definition a ketogenic diet, meaning that it's very low or with zero carbohydrates. That means your body will learn how to burn fat for energy, be in ketosis basically. And that's one of the most effective ways of losing weight, because it effectively teaches your body to burn fat, be it dietary fat or being your own body fat, for energy. So whenever you don't eat in between meals, and chances are when you're on a carnivore diet, you don't eat very often because it's so satiating. If you have a big protein, if you have 1 pound or 2 pounds of meat for breakfast, you're likely not going to be hungry until the evening. for your second meal. In between, your body will burn fat for energy, including your own body fat, and that's one of the best ways to lose weight and to treat obesity. Here's the thing, if you're absolutely set on including some fiber in your diet because you, for whatever reason, believe it's necessary, there are actually some carnivore-friendly sources of fiber, or at least compounds that act in a very similar fashion. And one is, there are types of carbohydrates called oligosaccharides that are the byproduct of the aging process involving fermentation in cheeses. So if you eat aged cheeses, and during the aging process, the bacteria in the cheese can produce those oligosaccharides, and they act like prebiotic fibers. They are not a plant fiber per se, or not exactly the same as a plant fiber, but they kind of act in a similar way as prebiotics. So if you eat a lot of aged cheeses, then you get some of those prebiotic fibers as part of your diet. And I would consider cheese to be a somewhat carnivore-friendly source of food. It's obviously still, animal-based, and a lot of carnivores that I know consume cheese or dairy in particular. There are also certain cheeses that are made specifically with probiotic bacteria, so you can get those as well. Raw milk cheeses may also contain some of those oligosaccharides that are found in milk, and pasteurization usually breaks those down into individual compounds, but if you get raw milk cheese, then you still get some of those prebiotic fibers, or even if you drink raw milk. Now, the thing is, with most of the raw milk cheeses that I found here in Georgia, they might use raw milk to start making the cheese, but then during the cheese making process, they heat it up. And so they effectively pasteurize it anyway, because I was always wondering, why is it not allowed for farmers to sell raw milk for human consumption, but I can find raw cheese at Whole Foods? And the other day I actually looked at the label and it said in the fine print, to improve taste, bullshit, they heat it up to 158 degrees Fahrenheit or so. That's pasteurizing it, you might argue it's a low heat pasteurization, but pasteurization nonetheless. So it's not truly raw milk cheese. So if you really want to find raw milk cheese, you probably have to go and buy it from a farmer directly, and it might be labeled then for as pet food or whatever. But that's another option. Then there is one thing that you're probably not gonna have readily access to or even want to drink, but there is such a thing as human milk oligosaccharides. So HMOs, they are part of human breast milk. And so, chances are when, if you have a baby, or if you want to have a baby and you want to start out on a carnivore-based diet from the get-go, after weaning, even during the breastfeeding time, there are already certain fibers in the breast milk, or at least, those prebiotics that one could consider, are similar to fiber. So that's that as well. But beyond that, if you're mostly concerned about including fiber as part of a carnivore diet to improve your gut health, that's really the number one argument that I've heard so far, then I would, instead of worrying about fiber, I would make sure to include fermented dairy products like kefir or maybe buttermilk. I consume that a lot, especially raw, kefir and raw buttermilk if I have access to it. I make the kefir myself from raw milk that we buy. That's a great way to get good bacteria into your gut. Bone broth, that's very rich in collagen, is also a great way to improve your gut health. Bovine colostrum that you can buy in powder form, unless you have access to a farm that, where you get, raw, fresh colostrum. We don't, unfortunately. So I usually buy bovine colostrum powder that we consume then during certain times of the year. And I also encourage you, again, if gut health is your main issue, check out my blog post and YouTube video on how I healed IBS. But if you're on a carnivore diet, you're already in the best way. That would be my number one recommendation. Cut out everything but meat, salt, and high quality water, and do that for 30 to 90 days. And chances are your gut issues are gonna be healed. And with that, we're gonna wrap it up. Again, I have a blog post on michaelkummer.com that goes into much more details. Also talks a little bit about why humans do better eating meat rather than plants. In case you worry, aren't we supposed to be omnivores and consume a lot of plants, etc.? So I cover that as well. With that, I want to wrap it up. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe, hit the alert button so you get notified when I publish more videos like this. If there's something you didn't like or some recommendation, suggestion, or feedback, let me know in the comments, and I hope I'll see you next time.